Okay, good evening, Al-pam viewers. Welcome back to the Al-pam News Network. I'm Virginia, and I'm excited to have you tuning in with us for an insightful conversation tonight. Our special guest this evening is Marrow. I'm so sorry, it's MichelleMarrow. Uh,
Yeah.
Michelle is a candidate for the North Carolina Superintendent of Public Instruction. And she has a 3-point plan. And I'm going to elaborate a little bit for you for a second. That it includes scholastics, safety, and spending. And that plan is for what she likes to say, a brighter tomorrow. So, welcome, Michelle. Expand for us a little bit on your background, where you come from, and your experience.
Sure. Thank you so much, Virginia, for having me on. I'm a wife, mother. I've been a lifelong conservative. I am a Christian. I'm a nurse as well as an educator. And for the last 8 years, I've really been an activist in trying to protect the freedoms of every North Carolina citizen here and get people engaged in the process of reaching out to our elected officials and letting them know what we need and what we want. Because after I homeschooled my kids for several years, and I feel like it really redeemed my history education, specifically about civics. And so I've been studying civics, and I taught civics for the last 9 years here to high schoolers, as well as chemistry and biology and Spanish. My husband and I were missionaries in Mexico, and I learned Spanish while I was there. 3 of my 5 kids were born in Mexico City. So I also have a perspective on the life of people south of the border and what that looks like. And so I feel like with all that we're facing here in North Carolina, I've really been focused on education reform the last 5 years, specifically because I feel like we are doing a grand disservice to our young people when we are not preparing them to be critically thinking and able to solve problems, able to handle conflict, able to enter into the workforce and pursue careers that are not only going to be financially rewarding, but also personally rewarding. And I think that should be the goal of our school system, whether it be public, private, homeschool, or charter schools. I think that should be the end goal. We're not raising children, we're raising adults.
All right. Well, thank you for expanding in that. So let's go on the first point of your 3-point plan, scholastics. Okay, let's
Sure.
expand on that. Um, in that, you've said that you want to end DEI, and for people that don't know what that is, it's called diversity, equity, and inclusion. And you want
Right.
to end critical race theory teaching training on day one. So go ahead and elaborate on how you plan to navigate away from the racially divisive and sexually explicit content that the state has prioritized in our schools and move North Carolina schools back into the academic principles of math, science, and reading.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. So many people don't know the North Carolina Constitution gives the legislature the job of offering every school age student a sound basic education. And so what's happened is when we allow the U.S. Department of Education, the federal education to come in, they offer us only 11% of our entire budget. And so for instance, last year it's looking at $13 billion, billion with a B, is what we're spending as North Carolinians on our K through 12 educational system. There's about 1.5 million students in the classrooms, but here's the tragedy. Uh, Over 50% of our students across the board from pre-K through 12th grade are not passing their end of grade tests. In other words, they're not passing simple competency in reading, math, and in science. And so, but we're not failing them and holding them back and allowing them to get what they need before they move on. We just keep pushing them along because we're making all of our decisions based on data points, right? We have all of these markers that we have to hit in order to be able to get funding. So instead of the funding being the tool to help our children to be academically prepared, the money ends up becoming the goal. And so what I'm saying is when they add things like Common Core and social emotional learning and critical race theory means you have to change the curriculum, diversity, equity, and inclusion. What people don't recognize is whenever the government tells us that we have to have those programs, we end up having to have those programs in all 115 districts in order to get the money. And what that looks like is you have to hire people to be department heads and associate heads and people to manage that new curriculum, manage those new regulations, manage all of that. And so this is just a simple example. Here in Wake County, where I live, in order to get federal funding, which we in 2020, it was 2022, we received $2.1 million of federal money. And but we had to have a DEI department. And our DEI department has 8 people in the leadership of that department. They are paid $1.3 million of salary. So that's just the salary. That's not counting the benefits packages. So just to have DEI, we have overstepped the entirety of the $2.1 million of federal money. So that's why they're always saying we don't have money to pay our teachers more. We don't have this to buy curriculum. It's because we're putting it into special interest groups. We're putting it into government programs, and we are then paying the government to put burdens on us that are not helping our kids scholastically.
Right, right. Thank you for going into that. So, another key point in scholastics that your campaign has addressed is that you want to strengthen learning partnerships with community colleges and businesses in each of the 115 districts. So, how will the Office of Public Instruction, under your leadership as a superintendent, provide associate level classes and internships in every high school?
Okay. Great question. So right now there are many districts throughout North Carolina that are doing this very well, that they have dual enrollment classes. They even have, areas that you can do it right on the campus where you can get skilled trade work, or they've partnered with businesses in the area and they offer internships for juniors and seniors in high school. I really think this needs to happen across the entire state. North Carolina is a very rural state. And so it's easy for people that are in Charlotte or in Raleigh or in, Durham or over in Greensboro. They can think, well, going to the community college is really accessible, right? Because we have all these opportunities for after school jobs. We have all these opportunities, but that's not really true of all of the rural communities. So it's going to have to be a partnership actually with helping the legislature to even create infrastructure in some of these smaller towns because but to begin with, let's look at a farming community. Why aren't we helping the students that might want to go into farming? Why aren't we offering that for the farmers to come in and to start training people, and they can work during the summers or they can work in the after school program? I think for high schoolers, we should have a work study program. You should be able to go to class maybe from 7 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon, take an hour for lunch, and then go to work from 2 to 6 in the afternoon and get work experience, and also to figure out if this is something that you might want to pursue after high school, or if it's something that you want to pursue and you need to go to college, post-secondary. But I think we need to start opening up the horizons for our young people, that they can see every young person has skills and talents and interests that we should be fueling, so that everyone doesn't think, I have to go to college and get this 4-year degree. It's fine to do that, but after 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, 9 months out of the year for 13 years of training up our children, I think they should be able to enter into the workforce and to make a living for themselves after high school, if that is their choice. So I think we need to start broadening that horizon, because we really are struggling for skilled laborers here in North Carolina. It was a few years ago, the average age of a plumber in North Carolina was 60. That was the average age. And as we're growing and more people want to move here, we need these people that you can be a skilled laborer, make great money for yourself, own your own business, work your own hours. And it's a huge benefit to the community.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So let's talk about safety, which is your second point in your plan. And so give our listeners some background on how the Office of the North Carolina Superintendent of Public Instruction can ensure student resource officers and enhance security measures like video surveillance, weapons detectors, and such in our schools.
Right. My opponent would like to say that she doesn't have any power to do that. It's all at the district level. But I will say this: there is a Department of School Safety, and what they do is they set standards for the 115 districts. So we need to have people in there that are knowledgeable and that are going to set standards that these districts and these superintendents, the local superintendents, need to get the boards and the individual schools to follow. And when she says, well, we can't make them do it, this is literally what Truitt said on Saturday. She said, we can tell them that this is a great plan, but we can only hope and pray that they do it. And I say that's not true, because the superintendent actually does handle the budgetary funds. So in other words, the legislature determines what money districts are going to get, but the superintendent's office, the DPI, is the one who actually hands out the checks. And you may be seeing Catherine going around to different districts now, handing them big checks because it's now an election year, so we need to give everybody money. But my take is, unless those school districts have developed their safety plan and they've told you how they're going to spend that money, and they've proven that they're going to have whatever the plan is, if it's going to be so many resource officers in a school, if it's going to be a video surveillance system, whatever that's going to be, until they have that in the works of how it's going to be played out, I don't think we should be giving them checks for that until it's ready and it's workable. And I think that is the way that you hold people accountable, when you can't specifically, make them do what they should be doing.
Okay. So regarding your commitment to discipline and safety, how do you plan to address the root causes of misbehavior, fostering a positive and supportive school environment?
Right. Well, I think one thing is incentives. Actually, young kids especially, they love to know that they are pleasing to people, right? Like they want to be praised for what they're doing. But I think children need boundaries. They need to know that if they themselves or someone in one of their peers gets out of control, they need to know that there is an adult who's trustworthy, who's going to bring everybody back in and maintain order and civility in the classroom. I think when we tell our children that they shouldn't be expected to be held to a high standard of self-control, I think we're really harming them, because children, when they don't know what to expect from day one to day two, it actually does cause anxiety. It causes anxiety when you don't know if anybody's going to be in control, if people get out of line. So I think one of the things that makes private schools so successful is not just that they don't have a lot of these special interest issues, and the DEI and the CRT, they're not forced to kind of put their curriculum within those boundaries. But I think too, they have a known standard of conduct, and usually you have to sign that as a parent, you have to sign it as a student, you have to sign it as a teacher. And I think it would be wise for us to offer that to our districts and to urge them to do that in their individual schools. So at the beginning of the year, everyone knows what the expectations are. They also know what the consequences are going to be. So when something does happen and it's necessary to bring the teachers in together with the parents and the administrators, the parents aren't going to assume the worst of the school, right? That you're not picking on my child because you don't like them for this reason or that reason. You know that this is the standard in our school. And do you remember at the beginning of the year when we all signed this? Because we want an environment where teachers can teach, students can learn, and everyone feels safe.
Okay. In your safety plan, you emphasize public town halls with various stakeholders. So how do you intend to incorporate diverse perspectives and needs into your decision-making processes?
Yeah, and I think the way that you go about this, it has to be communication.
Right.
Honestly, I believe safety and even education in general, it's probably one of the most uniting issues that we discuss. Because
Mhm.
regardless of race, religion, or politics, everyone wants their children to be successful, right? We want them to be self-controlled. We want them to be disciplined and hardworking and honest adults to grow into that. And so I think the state is divided into 8 different like sections. And so right now there is like a parents advisory council that there's 50 people from around the state. I'd like to make that be more like 115, to have at least one parent advisor from every district in North Carolina. I think because there's 8, potentially we could have one every month to have a meeting out of the 8 months of the year, not doing it in August because that's kind of a crazy time, but just have these meetings that are out in the community and open it up. I would put people on that within the department that you can ask questions ahead of time so that we know what we're going to address when we go to the meeting. So you don't spend all of the time with people, asking questions and taking too much time. So that's my thing is what we want is for whatever district you live in, for our children to have an absolutely excellent educational experience and to be ready to enter into adulthood prepared academically as well as character wise and all of that.
Okay. Let's transition into spending, the third point of your 3-point plan.
Sure.
Um, so you have a keen focus on fiscal responsibility, on the free market, and a competitive environment.
Hmm.
How specifically do you plan to streamline spending through fiscal policies and practices while ensuring teachers and students receive the support that they need?
I think the first thing I will do is I want to get an external audit. So I'll even be going to the legislature while if I beat Catherine, even if I don't, I'm probably still going to be fighting for education because I've been doing it for 5 years. But I will be going to the legislature and requesting that we do an external audit because I think it's important that we figure out where is this money going. And we need to look at any program, any department that cannot show statistical evidence of positive improvement in academics or in character or in career preparedness. If there's something that's we've just been doing for 15 years because it's just always been there, it might be time for us to take money from that and siphon it to something else that potentially is going to help our children to succeed academically. So that's what I'm saying. Within the money that we have, the first thing we need to do is figure out where is money being spent that potentially is not getting down to the classroom and helping our teachers to teach and helping our students to learn. That's the first thing, because we need to remember the government doesn't have any way of making money besides asking the taxpayers for it from their pocket. So it seems very gratuitous to tell everyone we need more money and we need to pay the teachers more and we need more money for this, and it's not fair that the General Assembly isn't giving us more money. But especially in this economic climate, everybody needs to understand, as tax-paying North Carolinians, what they're saying is, we want you to pay us more. And I think as fiscal conservatives, We have got to be responsible with the money that we're being given. And if there are things that are maybe extras that we need to do without until we can raise the scholastic performance and preparedness of our students, if that has to happen for a few years, then that's what we need to do. Because number one, we need to intellectually prepare our children to be able to enter into the workforce or to do whatever they're going to do post-secondary. And I feel like that we need to shift priorities. And I say after we do the audit, we start the funding and our budgeting from the classroom up rather than the other way around.
Okay. So, I mean, speaking of audits, recent audits revealed that there was significant financial mismanagement in the DPI.
Yes.
So, how do you regain public trust when it comes to the handling of funding?
That's a good question. What I would do first is I'm going to find people who are already trusted people in North Carolina to be able to manage this budget. I think we need to find people who are experts in whatever their field is. I think as a leader, that's what you do. I don't need to know everything about everything. I'm going to find the people who are experts in what they do, and I'm going to put them into leadership positions in the department. One of the problems with our current superintendent is when she got into the role, she got rid of many conservatives in leadership and ended up replacing them with people who have a very progressive agenda and were more than happy to take the special interests and do what the Department of Education wanted us to do. And it went more of a political bent in all of the CRT and the DEI and all of this stuff. That's where the focus ended up becoming, rather than on the sound basic education of kids being able to read and write and do math and understand science and history. And so that's what I would do. I will put people in my administration. I will hire people who have a track record of dependability and responsibility and trustworthiness to be able to do this. We owe that to the taxpayers of North Carolina.
Okay. So your spending plan emphasizes ending contracts with organizations that don't demonstrate a positive impact. How will you evaluate and measure this impact, particularly in the realm of education programs?
Well, I think you need to look at what was the original intent, right? Most of these contracts, they have a scope and a sequence of what they're supposed to be achieving, right? That's the reason why we contract with them. So that's what we're going to have to look at. We're going to have to look at hard, objective facts. We can't do this subjectively. It's not about how we feel about certain things. We need to say, okay, if this was intended to raise math scores, if this was intended to increase our literacy rate, if this was intended, right, to help children to be able to do STEM, if that was the reason why we started program A, B, or C, and if we're not seeing those results, let's go around the country and see who is achieving those results at a higher rate. Let's go around the world for that matter and see what countries are really excelling in the weak areas of weakness that we struggle with here in North Carolina. And let's ask them, what are you doing? What have you done? And let's replace that with something that hasn't been functioning.
Okay. All right. So let's go back to talking about our local farmers. Your plan talks about partnering with the local farmers and businesses to lower the costs and enhance unity in the districts.
Right.
Please expand on those partnerships and how they can directly impact spending in the DPI.
Certainly. So in Texas and in Tennessee and in Georgia, I've been looking into the partnerships that they have there with their farmers and with the schools, and also not only the farmers, but I've even approached legislators on the education committee and said, what about even offering local grocery stores? Like if there's 3 different grocery stores in an area saying, would you provide food for the school, these 4 schools in your district for this week? And would you do it for this week? And we'll give you a tax break. We'll give you some type of incentive in order to do that. Farmers as well. It's so much cheaper for us to be taking things that are from close by in the area, and it's benefiting the farmers, it's benefiting the children, because you're not going to have as many processed foods that are very expensive. When you're looking at Cisco and a lot of these different organizations that are sending everything that's prepackaged, and it's frozen or it just needs to be heated up, a lot of that doesn't have the nutritional density that something that's fresh would. And so why not offer a hot, well balanced, nutritious meal once a day and let our nutrition staff actually be making that meal? When they get up, when they get in the morning, make the meal for the students, and it's going to be one meal a day people know what it's going to be. If your children, if you don't like it and you don't want to eat it that day, well, then you bring your peanut butter and jelly sandwich or your cheese sticks or whatever it might be. But I think it's time to stop making our schools be filled with all of these processed foods that are just taste good, but might not be even giving our kids the ability to focus well in the afternoon, right? That's our food is our fuel. And so it's wise. Then we can be teaching them about nutrition and about how to keep yourself healthy, and ways that you can fight off obesity, fight off diabetes, fight off heart disease, and all of these things, and have them have a palate for things that are that are more beneficial to their bodies as a whole. And
Okay. There's one more point I want to address here, and when it
sure.
comes to spending, it's the migrant crisis. Okay,
Yeah.
the crisis of all these migrants coming over our southern border, they're being just pushed into our communities,
Mhm.
and that affects what happens in our communities at the local level in our schools, because the children that come over the border are we have to educate them. And
Mhm.
so, at least in my county, one of the things that's been mentioned is, bringing in more bilingual teachers and spending money on things like that. What is the DPI going to do here in North Carolina under your leadership to address this crisis coming into North Carolina?
Well, as I had told someone earlier today, my husband and I were in Mexico for 4 years, and so I speak Spanish. 3 of my 5 kids were born in Mexico, and so my heart is really for a lot of the people from Mexico and south of the border. I will say this: we have got to put American North Carolina families first. Just point blank. And we need to protect our teachers, because the teachers that we have right now are really overloaded, because they not only have children that are, have really special learning needs, but they also have in the same classroom children who are advanced, and then they have children that they cannot communicate with, because it might not even be Spanish, but it might be, we have so many people coming from all over the world that just English is not their first language. I would suggest this. I think that we need to make it clear that when someone comes and their child does not have enough of a grasp of the English language to be able to participate in class and just kind of integrate immediately, I think the first year that they are here, they should only be focused on English language. So an ESL teacher would truly be teaching English during the day, and they would be teaching it, to the different class levels during the day. And then you would have children that are all coming to the United States for the first time, right? So they have something in common, and they can be with one another and learning English together. They could still participate in specials, whether it's PE or it's art or it's but what I'm talking about is, if you don't have enough English to understand your English class, or to write in English, or to read in English, or to do your history, I think we need to give them a year to learn the language. Children are incredibly able to learn another language. And then I would like to see us use our schools in the evening time to help parents to do ESL classes, and to partner with, already there's a lot of nonprofits in each of our cities, and maybe to expand that into the rural areas where the parents can learn English in the evening time. It could be a place where the kids can be there and potentially be getting tutoring if they needed that, and do that a couple of nights a week, so that we can also have communication with the parents, because this is one of the problems. You can teach the children to speak wonderful English, but really the goal should be for our school system that we unite the parents and the teachers together so that together they can help a child to achieve their greatest potential. And when the parent is kind of left out of that loop because they have not mastered the English language, that really sets up, it just, the system doesn't work as well. We want the families to be involved. We want this to be a strengthening of the families, a strengthening of the community. And even, we can offer naturalization classes so that they can actually become, they can become American citizens and they can learn that history. I think it would be beneficial to use our schools that aren't used during the evening hours, to serve our new citizens in that way.
Okay. So is there anything else that you want to expand on before we close out tonight that maybe we haven't touched on?
I just like to touch on, a lot of people talk about that the superintendent doesn't have any power, that because she doesn't have a vote on the state board of education, because she can't mandate that the districts do what they're going to do, that she really doesn't have any power. But I just wanted your listeners to know that there are a lot of things that you can do that don't have to do with mandating people to do something. And one of those things is advocating. I have been traveling around the state of North Carolina for the last several months, actually for the last year and a half, with a different organization. But there are so many people that are going to their school board, and it's teachers and it's parents and it's students, and they don't feel like they're being heard at the local school board level. And so they'll go to the school board and then they'll go to the superintendent, their local one, and they don't hear anything. So then they move up to the DPI and they contact the superintendent. And the superintendent's usual response is, that's really not my job. I can't really do anything. I understand that it's hard, but I'm sorry because I'm powerless to do anything. That is not going to be the way that I function. If I don't have the direct ability to change something, I'm going to find the person that does. And I'm going to have a conversation with them. And we're going to bring the parties together and we're going to get to the basis of this. It's the same thing with the legislature. If there's communication with them, understanding what laws we need to hold our schools accountable, and if they know that and they hear that from the people, then that helps us to write policy for the State Board of Education to vote on. And that policy is what needs to be done at the school level. So there are ways to hold people accountable. I already talked about the budgetary things and the contracts that you mentioned. But there are ways that you can communicate, that you can advocate, and that we can come to find common ground, with the State Board of Education, with the legislature, and with the local superintendents and school boards, that we really can improve education in North Carolina. And that's my goal.
All right. Well, that concludes our conversation with Michelle Marrow. Tomorrow.
Like tomorrow. That's right.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Everybody gets my last name mixed up sometimes too.
That's funny.
And she is a candidate for North Carolina's Superintendent of Public Instruction. And Ms. Marrow, we really appreciate your time and your insight into your 3-point plan, and also just your insight on how you can be an advocate for communities across the state. So thank you all for joining us on the Al-pam News Network. Make sure you stay informed, and we will be back with more discussion on the issues that matter to you next time. All right. Good night, guys.
Good night.